What's up, everybody? It's your girl Toyzilla, back with another episode of Toyzilla Streams Book Club. Now, as promised, we are on the second book of the Looking Glass Wars trilogy. This one's called Seeing Red by Frank Better. Today we'll be reading chapters 2, 3, and 4. If you haven't read the previous chapters in the series, they are up on our YouTube channel. Just search Toyzilla and look for our little Bear Bot logo. You'll see it up on the display. Without any further ado, I guess I'll go ahead and get started. Again, if y'all want to do some artwork or draw while reading along, you want to sit it in later, I will not mind that. I will not mind that at all. All right, here we go. Jumping right in here. Chapter 2. The guards were nearly as unforgiving as the mountain the prisoners labored against every day. Their hands cut and swollen from smashing at rock with dull hand spikes and blunt pickaxes. They had forgotten what it was like for their muscles not to ache. The day-long monotony of hammering reverberated in their bones even after they slogged back to their dormitories to lie on their bunks and wait for sleep, hoping to dream of open fields and bright light. Anything but their lives at the crystal mines, with its windowless housing bunkers and mining tunnels lit sparingly by fire crystals. They came from all levels of Wonderland society. Once pampered sons of business leaders and ranking families whom Red had caught exhibiting goodwill to the less fortunate. Law-abiding shopkeepers and restaurateurs who had refused to make monthly donations to her imperial viciousness's accounts. Homeless youths Red had deemed useless, as they had shown no tendency to violence. But among them, one actually deserving of punishment, whose backside was, despite his having lost weight since his arrival, still more rotund than the rest of him. Jack of Diamonds' time at the mines hadn't been as woeful as it might have been, since he was adept at pocketing small fragments of crystal, which he used to bribe guards for an extra bowl of inflow rice or for less strenuous work assignments. Yet physical labor was physical labor, and, as Jack often told anyone who would listen, the stuff was beneath him. As for the inflow rice, it was supposed to expand in his stomach and make him feel full, but even two bowls worth left him hungry, and its blandness caused him to mourn all the more the loss of the savories and feasts he had once enjoyed as a free, high-ranking denizen. Sitting on the edge of his bunk, grubby and wigless, he bragged to his dorm mates, as he did every night, of his former life. I had countless footmen and servants. I wore clothes made of only the most exclusive materials, such as Winook skin and caterpillar whiskers. And as to wigs, I could praise them for an entire lunar cycle and still not relate a tenth of their beauty. I had the finest wigs the queendom has ever known. This occasioned much confused murmuring among his listeners. Jack of Diamonds had plenty of hair. Why would he wear wigs? If I had looked down from my privileged seat atop Wonderland Society, Jack went on, I wouldn't have seen any of you. That's how little you would have been. You criminals could not possibly understand how difficult this is for me, having to share a room with you. Then, as he did every night, he suddenly cried, There's been a mistake. I'm Jack of Diamonds, and I don't belong here. Tonight, however, hardly had he uttered these words when he was knocked to the floor. Chunks of stone flew every which way. The air became heavy with dust. A glowing orb generator had blasted a craggy hole in the wall. Jack scurried underneath his bunk, squeezing as far back as he could to keep from sight. Peeking out, he saw guards exchanging fire with a shadowy enemy. The razor cards of their 80-52s, automatic dealers capable of shooting a deck's worth with a single pull of the trigger, zipping past, searing through the night sky. A figure stepped through the blasted hole into the dorm. Jack of Diamonds. Jack hustled out from under his bunk and approached the figure with open arms, as if welcoming a guest to his drawing room. "What took you so long, my good man?" "We have to be quick," the figure said. Jack bowed to his dorm mates, who lay in various degrees of dishevelment and shock from the blast. "Gentlemen, I bid you farewell. My parents' emissary has arrived to take me home." And with that, Jack of Diamonds escaped the crystal mines. Mm-mm-mm. They said they disowned them. Biscuits. Chapter 3. The briefing room hadn't yet been used in its official capacity. Thrice daily meetings during which Bidwit, Dodge, General Doppelganger, and Alice's other advisors would apprise the Queen of pressing Wonderland business, be it financial, political, or militaristic. "What's this I hear about you refusing to come to my party?" Alice teased, forcing a professional smile onto her face as she glided into the room, hexagonal in shape, with holographic viewing screens lining the walls, and at its center a thick, heavy conference table carved from a single slab of soapstone. King Arch was not one for teasing. He turned from his intel ministers, with whom he'd been conferring in a lowered voice. "Queen Alice," he said, "I make no secret of my prejudices. I don't believe the turmoil Wonderland has recently endured would have happened were it a kingdom instead of a queendom. But I have come to pay what respects I can to you, for between you and your Aunt Red, I much prefer having you as a neighbor." "Thank you, I think," said Alice. "Shall we sit?" The hollow screens were displaying real-time scenes from one metropolis's major thoroughfares and intersections. Arch lowered himself into a chair between the screen showing the newly named Genevieve Square. The intel ministers removed themselves to a corner of the room and remained standing while two fellows with faces as inscrutable as masks took up positions on either side of their king. "I feel safe when I travel with them," Arch said, noticing Alice's interest in his bodyguards. "Their names are Ripkins and Blister, and their combat skills, I think, would rival those of even the famed Hatter Madigan, though I've been informed that he has taken a sabbatical." Alice nodded. "He needed some time to attend to personal matters, but he's available to us if we need him." The truth was, neither she nor anyone else knew where Hatter had gone or when he'd return. On several occasions she had stood next to the heart crystal to maximize her remote viewing ability, searching for him with her imagination's eye. The everlasting forest, the chessboard desert, the valley of mushrooms, outer wildebeestia, even the volcanic plains. No matter where she looked, she failed to locate him. He seemed to have vanished from Wonderland altogether. From out in the passage came a stifling sound. Humbug Molly ran into the room and took up position at Alice's right flank. "King Arch," she said, "I'd like you to meet my bodyguard, Humbug Molly." Humbug Molly bowed, but at the sight of her, what with her coat a trifle too large and the heavy backpack that she wore awkwardly, the king laughed. "What's so funny?" Molly scowled. Alice Alice placed a calming hand on the girl's arm as King Arch struggled to control his laughter. The walrus butler toddled into the room with a pitcher of Flugelberry wine, two goblets, and a platter of tarty tarts. After the wine had been poured and the walrus dismissed, Arch cleared his throat and reluctantly begged the queen's pardon. Her bodyguards, too, of course. He did his best to look serious, but his amused glance kept returning to Molly. "So where's the heart crystal?" he asked. "I was hoping to have a hologram made of me basking in its glow." "I wouldn't have thought the crystal was of interest to you," Alice answered. "Possession of it means little to those not gifted in imagination." Arch waved a hand, dismissive. just like a woman not to listen. I didn't say I wanted to possess it, Your Highness. Personally, I find whatever it is you do with your oh so powerful imagination to be overrated. Consider me a tourist who has come to see one of Metropolis's main attractions. I'm sure you'll grant that the heart crystal, as a source of creative inspiration for the cosmos, is among those. We no longer keep it in the open. But I thought Red had been disposed of. What is the harm in keeping it somewhere for the public to enjoy? Disposed of? We can only hope. Alice and her advisors had discussed sending a small force into the heart crystal in pursuit of Red and the cat, which Dot had volunteered to command. But the risk involved and the unlikelihood of the mission meeting with success had argued against it. No living thing had ever passed through the crystal, and there was no guarantee that a physical body survived. Alice had come up with an alternate plan. Bibwit, she had said, you've claimed that because Red passed through the heart crystal, my aunt in the form we knew her might no longer exist. I have claimed that, Bibwit had admitted, and a great many other things too. And whatever passes into the crystal goes out into the universe to inspire imaginations in other worlds, most specifically Earth, the world that has the most direct link to ours. Sounds familiar? So she has suggested that Hatters Rowan and Talk, two of the most gifted among the new military class, travel to Earth through the Pool of Tears to keep watch for signs of Red, the cat, or the influence of either. Arch said when he heard Red's death had not been assured. He reached for a tardy tart and tossed it to one of his bodyguards. The guard made a show of flexing his fingertips. Glinting saw teeth pushed out of the skin in the exact whirling patterns of his fingerprints. Without a wince of emotion, with hands moving as fast as the spinning blades of Hatter Madigan's top hat, he reduced the tardy tart to a pile of crumbs, then nodded to Arch. The food was safe to eat. The saw teeth sunk back into the skin of his fingers, and Arch helped himself to a tardy tart and finished it off in 1.5 manly bites. I see that Mr. Ripkins deserves his name, Alice said, for as she used her imagination to fuse the tardy tart crumbs back together, she noted that they weren't crumbs at all, but shreds. He had ripped the treat apart. The king pretended not to notice the tart settling on the platter, again in one piece and ready to be properly consumed. My guards are prodigies when it comes to more traditional modes of combat, he said, looking at Humbring Molly. Blades, orbs, crystal shooters, what have you. But why should I limit them to traditional modes when they can do so much more? He snapped his fingers. One of his intel ministers stepped forward and pushed up his sleeve. Blister lowered an index finger toward the minister's forearm. Ah, Arch said, and waggled a pinky. We don't want him permanently scarred, do we? Blister pressed the tip of his pinky against the minister's exposed skin. The minister clenched and began to sweat. His entire forearm blistered. It's best to have it drained as soon as possible, Arch explained. Otherwise, complications arise. As the blistered fellow was taken into the fold of the other ministers, Molly reached for her hat, which was vibrating in anticipation of action. She would show Ripkins, Blister, and their smug king who the prodigy was. Molly, Alice warned. It required all the discipline the girl had to restrain herself. Did the queen doubt that her bodyguard's abilities would impress these men? It's been brought to my attention, Arch, Alice said, troubled by the groans coming from the intel minister's huddle, that you're developing a weapon capable of destroying not only all of Wonderland, but Borderland as well. How do you know that? Alice shrugged. My people hear things. Bibwood Hart hears things, you mean? Said Arch, impressed. But so what if I'm building such a weapon? Surely you believe in scientific progress. I see no progress in creating a weapon capable of producing massive devastation. Don't you? I'm sure a man would. Alice sighed. On the viewing screen behind him, Genevieve Square was the picture of activity. Merchants who'd chosen to keep their shops open instead of attending the gala stood outside their groceries, gemstone ateliers, bakeries, and clothing stores greeting passers-by. Not long ago, as Red Square, the area would have been nearly deserted. A slum of abandoned apartment buildings and boarded up storefronts that even her colored soldiers had been reluctant to patrol. You don't think the overriding need for all citizens is peace and security? Alice asked. And perhaps for the threat of total annihilation faced by those who detect us as a deterrent that provides Borderland with all the security it needs. But I wonder, Miss Majesty, how aware you can be of Morgavia's military stockpiling if you question the need for such potent weapons. Aware enough, she said, though it was the first she had heard of it. Then perhaps you don't have the latest intelligence regarding the failed negotiations between Unterland and its breakaway province, Ganmead, because if you did, surely you wouldn't doubt the need for whatever weaponry our scientists can devise. Failed negotiations? I have been briefed on the latest intelligence, Alice lied. But I wonder if there isn't a way to secure Borderland without the threat of severe destruction or the loss of innocent lives or innocent lives. Oh, wise queen, is anyone really as innocent as you suppose? If I weren't dealing with threats from outside Borderland, I would yet be forever stamping out the ones from within. After your battles with Red, I can hardly believe it, but you seem to retain a touch of naivete. Citizens are not innocent, your highness. If the reins of government are not manfully applied, their aggressive, self-seeking nature will always upset peace and security. True peace is only possible through the absolute power of a single sovereign. And what if this absolute ruler were as self-seeking and aggressive as the most restless citizen out of his own glory instead of the common good? And what if women devoted themselves to domestic chores as they should? She would not allow herself to get angry, especially in front of Molly, whom she could feel bristling beside her. The difference between Red and King Arch might only be one of degree. She would have to be more circumspect around him. I apologize, said Arch. You are my host as Wonderland's queen, and I should behave accordingly. Alice stood. It's time I returned to my party, Arch. You're welcome to join the festivities, or not, as you choose, but I thank you for offering your respects. Alice and Humbug Molly started for the door. You know that I was one of the last people to see your father alive, Arch asked. Alice paused, not turning to face him. I've never met a finer king than Nolan, Arch went on. He was a brilliant politician and a brave soldier. The loss of such a king is itself cause to mourn. But when I consider that he and I were on the verge of securing greater cooperation between our nations to create a united front against unknown threats of the future, well. Even if Alice had been looking directly at Arch, she couldn't have known that he was lying. That he had in fact thought Nolan a weak and ineffective king who was forever at his wife's skirts, and that he'd sooner have had his head lopped off than ever entangle in his government with Wonderlands. She swept out of the room, Molly following, careful not to step on the train of her dress. A minister approached the Borderland ruler. Will we be joining the celebrations, my liege? Arch bent down, picked up a cracked button that had fallen unnoticed off Molly's coat. I think not, he said. I found what I needed. Chapter 4. Yeah, real quick before we sound this in. This King Arch fellow, I don't like him. I don't like him at all. But I'm gonna let y'all form your own opinions. Let's continue. Chapter 4. The ground became increasingly less fertile as the everlasting forge approached the gorge that separated it from the volcanic plains. The full heat and lava streams of which were visible to the card soldiers patrolling Wonderland's most isolated military outpost. How am I supposed to prove myself in battle if we never get into one? The two-card complained. If you had been in the battle, answered the four-card, you wouldn't wish for one. The four-card knew what he was talking about, having been shoveled here after most of his former deck had been annihilated in skirmishes with Red's forces. He had spent the lunar cycles of Alice's exile deep within the everlasting forest, guarding the camp that had once served as headquarters for the Allison Rebellion. The two-card glanced toward the parched, scanty trees that made up this part of the forest, which, from this vantage point, didn't seem so everlasting. He looked off toward the plains with its shimmers of heat, its bright, slow-moving lava flows, and its occasional bursts of the stuff from underground, as if the planet were nauseous and coughing up what it couldn't digest. Who would ever attack us from here? It makes no strategic sense. We're near nothing of vital importance to the queendom. Our enemies would have to use most of their strength just getting through the plain to reach us. Plus, they wouldn't exactly be leaving themselves an easy route of retreat. There's only one way to go, and that's back into the volcanic plains. The four-card had to admit this was all true. After Alice's ascension to the throne, General Doppelganger had established these far-flung military bases throughout Wonderland to serve as an early warning system. The first sign of anything unusual was to be immediately relayed to the bases closest to the trouble, as well as to Central Command. It was not possible to be too vigilant, the general preached. Decks of card soldiers had thus been deployed to the distant jungles of outer Wildebeestia, with its brambles and wildlife, and to the outermost quadrants of the chessboard desert, with its alternating squares of ice and black rock. Only the Valley of Mushrooms and the volcanic plains had been spared an influx of military personnel. General Doppelganger had ordered bases to be erected around the valley on various peaks of the Snark Mountains so that the caterpillar oracle's habitat could enter a period of new growth after being cleared of the mushrooms hacked to virtual mush by Red's forces. As for the volcanic plains, the belching heat of the place was so inhospitable to all life save Jabberwocky that General Doppelganger considered it a buffer zone or a no man's land between the kingdom and any opposing force. But, thought the four-card, even supposing that enemies did attack this outpost and somehow managed to fight their way into the thick of the everlasting forest, they would still be confronted with a wall of deflection, a series of looking glasses unconnected to the crystal continuum that spanned the entire breadth of the forest. Just as the glasses around the rebel Allison headquarters used to overlap one another at countless angles, these were aligned in such a way that, as you approached them, you saw not the reflection, but what looked like dense, impassable arborage, and so were deflected away from the one metropolis. To attack the queendom from the here would be suicide, muttered the two-card. Funny, but what the two-card most despised about life on this post was precisely what the four-card appreciated. It was the least likely ever to be attacked. He had seen enough of battle and death. I wish you'd stop that humming, said the two-card. The four-card was about to explain that he wasn't humming when all at once the forest trees began to whisper, troubled, hoarse whispering. Then he heard it too, a steady hum, approaching fast and going into a great swell of "Incoming!" He dove to the ground as a cannonball spider smashed into the wall beside him. The two-card fumbled with his weapon, unable to get off a single shot before the giant arachnid pricked him with its pincers and he crumbled to the ground, dead. Not about to become food for some artificial spider. The four card scrambled to his feet and ran, spraying razor cards from his 80-52 in the direction of incoming fire. Whoever his attackers were, they had begun to launch whipsnake grenades. Electric coils crackled, hissed, slingered all around him. In the frenzy of the eye-burning explosions and ear-stabbing squeaks of cannonball spiders, he saw the enemy rise up out of the gorge with amazing agility. Ordinary-looking Wonderlanders, except for the colorless crystal embedded in the eye sockets. How's it possible? The glass eyes, a breed of fighters manufactured by the maliciously inventive Red Heart, were supposed to have been destroyed. Their return could mean only one thing. Red had survived the heart crystal and was back in Wonderland. I fought her armies once and survived. I'll do it again, the four-card vowed. He emptied his 80-52 at the glass eyes. Razor cards shot out into the fireworks of battle, slicing through the enemy, dealing death. He dropped behind a bulwark to reload, was slamming home his last projectile deck into the 80-52's ammo bay, about to take aim, his finger on the trigger, when the glass eyes swarmed him. Whew. All right, y'all. All right, everybody. That is it for chapter 4. Wow, that got excited for a bit. I didn't know if my heartbeat was going to be able to keep up. Ooh. What is this y'all are trying to say? A clown mask dude behind me. Y'all are trying to scare me. Don't be trying to do that. That's messed up. Y'all know how I be feeling. Saying some class bound dude. Don't scare me like that. But like I was saying, that is the end for tonight's book club. And while y'all were reading, y'all felt like inspired to draw some artwork and would like to send it in. Again, post in the comment section up under the YouTube page, and I will tell you where you can send it in. But only when I start getting requests to send artwork in, aka digitally. I don't want y'all wasting postage or nothing like that. It's going to be a file y'all can send it to. Alright, so next time we will be reading 2 or 3 more chapters. Let's see, what today is? It's Friday. We are going to go ahead and be doing a stream on Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And after we play our video games, again, it's going to be another episode of Book Club. But always after, we wait for it to calm down, because this is like our cool down period. So I thank y'all for joining us. Because once again, if you like what you see, you turn on your PC and mute it. Alright now, everybody. That's it for me. Unless y'all have any more comments or anything to say, the girl Toyzilla is out. And stop trying to trick me with stuff. It's messed up. Trying to scare me. Alright. Good night, everybody. Toyzilla is out.